Today, we're looking at another camera to enter the collection and go on the shelf behind me by Minolta, a cute little thing. This is the Minolta Hi-Matic G. Look at it, it's so small and tiny. I know I have big hands as it is, but this really, for comparison, the first camera I ever got, a Canon Rebel T3i. It's tiny. Very little. We talked about Minolta before. We have another camera on the shelf behind us of their making. In 1962, Minolta released the 35mm Hi-Matic, and then came out with 8 other versions of it before the G in 1974. I found a lot of information about the Hi-Matic, but in general, instead of specifically about this version, the G, as everything does with each new one that they came out, they rolled out more and more features. Something interesting I found about Minolta is that they would rebadge their cameras for the US market. So I think instead of being called the Hi-Matic, here it was the Ansco Autoset, which if you look that up, specifically look up the original that was used by the astronaut John Glenn, because there's a really cool photo of the Earth from space that was taken on a Hi-Matic, called a different name, but the same camera. Now, when it comes to price, I couldn't find anything about the Hi-Matic G, what it released for, what it would sell for. It's a little murky no matter what. The best thing that I could find was that the second version of the Hi-Matic, the Hi-Matic 7. Nope, I read that correctly. Assuming my notes are accurate, they made the Hi-Matic 7 in 1963 after releasing the Hi-Matic in 1962. Now, I don't know if over the years cameras got easier to manufacture for a while before things would dip with the economy, and so maybe they were cheaper, or maybe they would stay around the same and they would just release a new version with new features to try to get people to buy a new camera, or maybe they got more expensive as they added new features. I have no idea. All of those are really possibilities, aren't they? I do know that I found a vintage ad online, a print from 1963, talking about taking the Hi-Matic 7 on vacation. It was a perfect vacation camera, small and would take great photos, easy to put into your bag. The price on the advertisement was $119.90. Again, that's not for this camera. That's not even for this year. About 10 years later is when this one came out. But at least at that point, buying a camera would have cost around $1,230 in today's money, which is a lot. That's more than I paid for my first camera. When it comes to the design, very simple, pretty easy to understand, definitely getting to the point where more regular people can just pick up a camera and use it. We've got a 38mm lens on here that is an f2.8. It's pretty fast. I like that. It's got lots of automatic modes already, which I actually find interesting. Let's see if we can get a good image here. On the lens itself, you can choose a few different subject options. If you're doing a landscape, or if you're doing a portrait or someone a little further away, you could choose all of those. You also have this selector wheel here, which chooses the distance. This one's a little tough. I don't know if it's supposed to be like that or if that's just my camera given its age, but it's real tough to kind of turn that one there. But it would help you set the distance, the focusing distance of the camera itself. And it had another selector here for your focusing distance. It would mention that as in 2 different places. And then on the front of the lens, it's a little harder to see, but down here in red is your film speed selector. That is this internal ring right here. You would turn that and it would change your film speed. So if you were using a faster speed, you could change it to depending on what it was. And in the manual that I found, it did mention the ASA or DIN and the conversion chart, which was apparently very common. I find these on several cameras. Similar to some of the other film cameras I've gotten here in the collection that have tripped me up. In order to open the back, you will pull the winding ring up and away from the camera, and that pops the back open. Fairly standard, although we definitely have some damage inside of here. It's kind of started rotting away the inner plastic, it feels like. Yeah, it's rather warped. It almost looked like sun damage, like someone had a magnifying glass that came in and hit there, but it's fine. It looks pretty cool inside. I imagine it might work. I can definitely see through the viewfinder, so that's cool. This, typically on most cameras I've seen, we've had a cold shoe. This is actually a hot shoe to attach the flash. It works electronically. That's really interesting. And then our shutter seems to work. You can't fully see, and I can't take the lens off, but it does seem to work. Pretty cool. Now, like I said, we kind of got one in the middle of a lot of generational upgrades, so there wasn't too much to find about this one. I did see that the Hi-Matic F which was the version before this, because of the alphabet, that one had an electro control like the ones before it, which required 2 batteries. They stopped doing that by the F, and the G was the first one where they introduced a single battery system. Now I opened this up, you can kind of see already from the coloring there, it was really corroded, which is why you don't want to leave batteries in electronics over long periods of time. Now, something else I definitely didn't notice before when I was doing my research, but I've just realized, I made a note about how this is a hot shoe. I found that you could add a flash attachment here, but there's also one built into the camera. I don't know why. Would both of them go off? Would one recognize that there was another? I'm not entirely sure. I would need an actual battery and to play around with it, which may happen in the future. I did find one other thing pretty interesting while I was researching this camera, and it didn't come from any of the research or looking online, but through my actual eye looking through the viewfinder. There is a guide, like some of the cameras that we've seen before, on the inside that just seems to be inside the lens itself. It's permanently there. It's just like a quick little cheat sheet of like your film speed and the conversion and things like that. But it's positioned in a way that you always see the lens in the bottom right hand corner. It's literally in there. Now, it's not an SLR, so it's not like that's going to show up. This is just giving you roughly what you're going to see through here. It's not actually reflecting down through it. You're not getting an idea of what the camera is going to see. It's going to be slightly off to the side. It makes me want to grab all the other cameras in the collection and look through the viewfinder to see if there are any others that this was a common thing that happened before they actually got to SLR where you were looking through the lens, or if that's just where they put it on this one and went, well, yeah, you're going to see a bit of the lens in the bottom right hand corner. It's going to block a little bit of the frame. It is what it is. I didn't even realize that this was made around the same time as the other Minolta that we've talked about in a previous video. That one came out in 1966, and the price of it was over $2,000 in today's money. So this was just another camera that they put out, designed at a different, aimed at a different audience, someone who would be more quick, just an easy, it's essentially a point and shoot because the lens doesn't come off, but it's smaller, it's more lightweight, and it was definitely maybe about half the price of the other one. I didn't even make that connection until right now while recording. That's really cool. And this whole video has been really cool. I like researching. That's another thing that I learned. Literally, you're seeing me learn here on camera. That's neat. It was fun researching this. I'm glad I have another Minolta in the collection. I like the look of these, if nothing else. Especially this little small kind of point and shoot. It's going to look great on the shelf behind me, and it's been fun. I hope one day I'll be able to actually set up a whole system where I can actually use them, get some film, make a dark room, experience them with yet another step, but that is in the future. And also in the future, we got one more video coming next week from this collection of cameras that my dad got me. It goes without saying, but learning new things, researching about cameras, this is something that I like.